Hello and welcome to Oops Palsy Podcast, the podcast where we discuss the realities of living with cerebral palsy. If you're new here, that's kind of what we talk about. So today we have a very special guest with us, attorney Russell Gregory. He's here to discuss the legal side of cerebral palsy and that kind of thing. 'Cause I know a lot of our community can run into legal questions and they're not sure where to turn or what to do. So that's why we kind of wanted to bring a professional on to kind of discuss that. So, Russell, so you study law. What kind of made you want to go into this particular kind of law?
Well, first, hi, Sharon, and thank you very much for inviting me. I really appreciate it. So what made me think about going into this kind of law? Let me tell you something. I never would have imagined that I would do it. I had no medical background at all. I was a good student in law school and did well in the bar exam, et cetera. So I ended up taking an offer with a major firm in Detroit, about 100 lawyers, and they had different teams, and their advanced team was a birth trauma specific team because the damages are so high. They wanted students on it who were sound academically, wouldn't have to spend a lot of time in the law. And they told me that I would be against the best attorneys in the state and the country, and that I would be spending far more time in medical libraries than law libraries. And boy, were they right. Seriously, for the first 6 months, I'm thinking, why are they paying me? I would have medical records on one lap, a medical dictionary on the other lap, back in the pre-computer days. And every other term that I ran into, I didn't know what it was. So I would have to turn to the medical dictionary. And sure enough, the months went by and I really started to get it within that very narrow specialty of obstetrics and particularly obstetrical medical malpractice. A job found me, a position found me. And if you would have said almost 40 years ago, what will you be doing? I never would have guessed this, but here I am still doing it.
That's awesome. I'm glad that you found that kind of career path. I think, I can definitely relate to pivoting and changing career paths. When I was younger, I did like a radio host show thing with my dad when I was a kid. And then I kind of pivoted to a bunch of different careers. And then if you would have told me that I would have been doing this like when I was 34, I would have been like, nah. And so I definitely can relate to that. Uh,
Well, that's fantastic that you had that early opportunity to see the tech
yes,
side and the broadcasting side. And wow, perfect for you.
yes. Yeah, no, and this was back when the internet first kind of started being a thing, like a few years after. But yeah, it was a full on radio show, just like from our computers, kind of crazy, especially back then when, now it's like there's a podcast left and right and there's so much stuff on the internet. But yeah, so you had switched to helping children and kind of going from that. So what do you find like the most exciting about your job?
Well, the best thing that I do now, and I didn't have the opportunity to do this with that first major firm when I started in Detroit, is I can help the kids. See, when I started out, I was with a defense firm defending doctors and hospitals in brain damaged baby cases, cerebral palsy cases. And I quickly found I worked my way through that and enjoyed the work and really came to know it. But you know what? I would be taking the depositions of these mothers. And, of course, my questions are designed to lead and hurt their case. Basically, I'm trying to defend. And I sympathized with the mothers and the kids, especially when I saw the kids.
What was there like? Can you give me an example of something that like moved you? Was clearly not the fault because I was caused. We're theorized it was like a turnover for some reason, and like that me as a child got injured. Um, what what case like what? Obviously, you can't give like exacts, right? But like, can you
Right.
give me an example of like a case that moved you in a way? Because I have no idea this even existed as a concept.
Yeah, and this was years later, but I had a woman in my office and she had a brain damaged child. And unfortunately, I was not able to find a case for her. And I worked on it very hard and I went through a lot of experts. And the fact is, it didn't appear that they did anything wrong. And I went through all the fetal heart tone monitor tracings myself, et cetera. And more importantly, she seemed to have a genetic syndrome that was not apparent phenotypically. There's genotype and phenotype, and it didn't show up in a phenotype that I would quickly recognize. Usually I can look at a child and quickly recognize whether or not they have a genetic syndrome, even an unnamed genetic syndrome, because there are thousands and thousands. We don't know nearly all of them. This child looked extremely normal, but she definitely was not. And the mother felt horribly guilty that she had had some alcohol early in the first trimester. And I'm talking like a glass of wine at a wedding.
Yeah, which is not bad. I've been through 3.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that the most painful thing for her, these parents, they loved their child. The most painful thing for her was thinking that she might have had something to do with it. And I was able to tell her and really heartfeltedly make her realize that it had nothing to do with anything you did. Not only the glass of wine, it had nothing to do with anything that you did. I assured her this was a genetic syndrome, didn't have a name for it that I could ascertain, didn't show up phenotypically, but this had nothing to do with her. And I'll tell you what, she was so relieved just to know that. She cried, just to know that.
I think that's one of the biggest things that we see in the community is parents will have this weight on themselves and they'll blame themselves. And we've gotten some comments and feedback on our videos about parents like thanking us that we're there for the parents too. But I don't think it's very common for parents to blame themselves when the reality is it's not a fault of the mother. It's, bad things happen to good people all the time, and it's not, anything that they may have done.
Oh, yeah, without a doubt. I see it all the time. This is a particularly extreme example of guilt. But yes, I do see it all the time. And amazingly, the parents are incredibly strong. Here's a little aside. I don't know if you know this. It's the case in Michigan and most states. If your child is neurologically injured enough, you can actually relinquish them for care for life to the state. I have never, in almost 40 years of practice, I have never seen a parent relinquish a child. And you can imagine the damages, the neurologic devastation and survival through it are unbelievable. I've never seen a parent give up a child. So yes, the parents are amazing.
It's that
Yeah.
parental bond for you.
It's really unbelievable. It's
Yeah.
inspiring.
So my understanding is that you had started your own law firm. What inspired you to kind of start your own law firm versus working with another firm?
So what happened was I was working with that defense firm, cross-examining moms. My heart was not in that. And so I switched. I finished a case with the top partner in a firm that did a lot of birth trauma. And he ended up offering me a position after that. We were against each other for a couple of years, and then we resolved the case. And he said, "Hey, are you interested here?" And I did. I mean, I sympathized with the parents anyway and the children. So I did. So I went to that firm, and I did that for about 4 years at that firm. And then I decided I can and should be doing this on my own. One thing I like is really the time to talk with the parents and such, and I wasn't getting that time there. It was about it was about cases and volume. A good job was done without question, but there wasn't a lot of contact like that. So I decided to open up my own firm and do only birth trauma. To my knowledge, certainly in this state, and I don't believe in the country, I don't think that anyone in that time, this was in the early 90s, there was no firm that handled just birth trauma. And that's all we did was birth injury cases.
I think even now it's kind of rare because most of the ones that I see are like the large firm medical malpractice where they handle kind of like everything. So I think it's kind of great that you've kind of taken a very specific area so you can dedicate all of your time to that and help more people in that specific area. Because I think especially when it comes to birth injuries, and I know with cerebral palsy, it's very isolating and it's very hard to kind of figure out where to turn to, who to talk to. Uh, and especially, when you're dealing with hospitals, their whole thing is to cover their back end. And, they're not going to help you through this traumatic experience. I'll let you take a question. I'll take like a couple. I don't want to be hogging all
shot
the
at it.
airtime here.
And Tyrell, I'm sorry, I didn't say hi to you in the beginning as well. First time we're meeting. To be honest with you, I'm sitting back here and I don't have my reading glasses on, and I kept looking at your name and I couldn't read it. But now I see it's Tyrell. So hi to you too, Tyrell.
Hi. My name. Which one do you leave off? I think the third one.
I think that was just on him starting his own firm.
Well, I'll
Just
tell
that
you
one.
what. And we went from there. Yep. Started my own firm doing just birth trauma. And then let me tell you how it's evolved along the same line that you're asking. If you're
Yeah.
looking for a question, I'll ask myself. So where did I get to? Here's where I got to. what I was doing was practicing only in Michigan, helping everybody here that I could, but also I was stretched very thin doing that because you can only litigate so many cases. And what I
Mhm.
did is I evolved that to where what I do now is I have, and you may have seen that Cerebral Palsy Law Center's Facebook page. It's called Cerebral Palsy Law Centers. I've made it very, very easy for the parents. All they have to do is personally message me on Cerebral Palsy Law Center's Facebook page. It's my page. Do a private message, comes right to me, and I say, make it really simple. Only give me the child's birth date and state of birth. They do that, and immediately I respond, which they're ecstatic about. How quickly can you get a hold of a lawyer? With me, as
Yeah.
quickly as you tap that in and you have me. So I look at that, I check the date and the state and the statute of limitations, and I find out immediately for them, is there still time to do something? And if there is, then we get into the substance. I'm sorry, Tyrell, go ahead.
So what would be the parameters that someone would feel inclined to turn to? What things that were the parent won the case or whatever? Like what would a parent be looking for to want to seek your help?
Well, the main thing is that the child has cerebral palsy and either attributed to birth events or pregnancy, can be during the pregnancy, can be during the birth events, can be immediate newborn care, something attributable to that causes cerebral palsy, or they just don't know. For example, something wouldn't fit into that if they had a child with cerebral palsy and there was a known genetic syndrome that caused it. I can't do anything about that. Right. You can understand
So
that.
like you're
Yeah.
both like a law firm and a consultant, see if like there literally is any reason why this child besides
Correct.
a
Right. The
genetic.
first thing I do very quickly with them is let them know if nothing can be done, and I tell them why. But if it's possible that something can be done, I will go down that path with them.
On the genetic front, like when the accounts you encountered, because you've read the books and like I haven't. The genetic marker, is it like something that leads to like the baby loses oxygen for some reason, or like some sort of like the infant does something that leads to cerebral palsy?
Yeah, you mean if it's not genetic, right?
Yeah, like the cerebral palsy is not genetic, but there's a genetic marker that creates a scenario where cerebral palsy is an outcome.
So
Yeah,
yeah, I
well,
think what Ty's
yeah.
getting into is there's been debate among the community with recent scientific studies that come out stating that genetics play a role in cerebral palsy.
And that's been bouncing around in our heads. So you have
Yes.
more information
Yeah,
in that. So I'd like to hear your opinion
Right.
yeah, definitely.
on that.
Yeah, I'd tell you that the genetic syndromes that I find are substantial, recognized syndromes on particular genes on particular chromosomes, and they can be identified. An example would be trisomy 13. That causes neurologic devastation, recognizable in genetic studies. So if they do a regular genetics panel, trisomy 13 would come up, and I can let the parents know this is recognized trisomy 13, this causes cerebral palsy, and every aspect of your child's cerebral palsy seems to be attributed to that. Now, if you're talking about genetic propensities for different things, is that what you mean? An analogy, here's an interesting analogy. You can have a genetic propensity for a type of stomach lining that predisposes you to stomach ulcers. So why can some people live in a certain way and never get stomach ulcers? Somebody else gets stomach ulcers. Well, it's not that genetics that's causing the stomach ulcers, but perhaps they can't tolerate acidity in the stomach or alcohol in the stomach or things like that that can bring on peptic ulcers. They could have a genetic predisposition. It's not the genetics that causes it, but it can predispose them to that.
So it's the same way like how somebody would have a genetic disposition to a higher stroke risk, or it's not necessarily that it is genetic, but it's they have that predisposition for a higher risk factor.
Yeah, I think that's the case with just about everybody. Just like we have a genetic predisposition to be able to run like Barry Sanders, some of the great runners, or not, right? It's a genetic predisposition without a doubt. Now, what causes that? Well, also a whole lot of practice and weightlifting and training and sprints but yeah, genetically, yeah, we're all predisposed to lean in certain directions more than others.
Okay. So when you had mentioned statute of limitations, and I think this is very important because a lot of people tend to maybe not realize that there is a statute of limitations that exists for filing a medical malpractice case or for getting their case looked at. And I know it's going to vary by state, and you said that you're in Detroit. What is the typical I guess, average length of like of the God, now I forgot. I'm sorry, guys.
The statute of
Baby.
limitations deadlines,
Yes,
how
thank
long do
you.
you
Oh
have?
my gosh. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
before you
Yeah.
can legally.
Well, they
Well, my
really
brain just
vary.
stopped
Yeah,
working like halfway through that question.
that's okay. You know, it's not your subject matter. I don't blame you. They really vary a lot. If I had to pick an average, I'd say between 10 and 15 years. However, there are states that are up to 21 years, 21 years from the, you can still bring it. There are states, I believe Louisiana is short as a year. Certainly Florida is 2 years. So there are very short time parameters, mid-range that I'd call maybe 8 to 10 years, maybe a little more. And then there's way up to 21 years. And as I said, I do this for parents in all 50 states now, and I check the
Wow.
statutes of limitation. Oh yeah, I get them from all around the country. I just got 2 this morning from out of state. To me, it has no meaning because handling them everywhere. The first thing I do is check with the birth date that they give me, the state of birth they give me. I check the statute of limitations deadline and let them know if there's still time.
Oh, well, that's awesome because when I initially came across your page, I had saw that it was based out of Detroit, and I was like, "Well, this guy's just in Detroit, but let me at least kind of get him on and kind of give people a guidance of where to go." So I think it's great that you're now branched out to where you can help in all 50 states.
Yeah, that's the reason I made the switch to what I'm doing. I've been doing it for years now, helping people all over the country, multi-million dollar resolutions all over the country now on behalf of these kids. It's a great system and a great opportunity to help.
What are
So
some
what
examples of successful case, and what's the ballpark of what you've earned for some of your customers?
A typical scenario would be lack of enough blood flow getting to the baby. You think of it as a lack of oxygen. It's really the full blood flow support, but certainly oxygen for cellular metabolism. Insufficient oxygen getting to the baby in utero, causing brain damage. Now, there are hallmarks for that on the fetal heart tone monitor tracings. You look for certain patterns, late deceleration, slow return to the baseline, diminishing variability. When you read those, there's squiggly lines for the baby's heart rate with squiggly lines below it for the mother's contractions. And you look at the baby's reaction to the stress of contractions, which diminishes perfusion briefly. And when that perfusion resumes, does that heart rate come back up to the baseline? Is there good variability? If doctors and nurses fail to be monitoring those constantly as the mother's in labor, if it gets into a bad pattern and they don't see it, that baby can become brain damaged. That would be a very typical scenario. The baby comes out with very low APGAR scores, that is poor breathing, coloration, tone, etc. at birth, and they need substantial resuscitation. This can happen at preemies or this can happen at term, but that would be a typical scenario.
What scenario would it be the physician's fault? Like, what would win it?
If they're not monitoring the heart tones or monitoring them at insufficient intervals, they're not checking them. These heart tones go to the nursing station centrally, so they're watching all these heart tones. But if no one's manning the nursing station, watching the heart tones, they can miss it. There's not a huge window. When you see this pattern, you have to start thinking along these lines. You have to prep them. You have to be ready for a C-section. Or if you're catching it written in, you have to crash section, get in there, get that baby out.
How would you prove on the case? Like, would you check like the sign-in times for a nurse for the watch station, or
Right.
what would you look for?
Yeah, medical records. You would look for the last time they checked the fetal heart tones. If they're checking at hourly intervals and all of a sudden they're checking, 3 hours goes by and then they'll check it and you have a horrible pattern, that would be something. You take depositions. Maybe a nurse did notice. Maybe a nurse noticed late decelerations. What did she do with it? Just go on to the next room? Or did she call the doctor? Did she report that maybe to the on-call resident at 3 a.m.? Let him look at the stress. So medical records and depositions, sworn testimony out of court prior to trial.
Okay, okay. So, what about children that are born premature? Because I know that is very common. I myself was born at 24 weeks. So, what about for parents that are told that their cerebral palsy is due to their child being born prematurely?
Yeah, that's a great question. So often parents tell me it was just due to prematurity. Oftentimes they don't even contact a lawyer because they're told, oh, it's prematurity, you can't do anything about it. But when they do get a hold of me, I look at the circumstances that resulted in the prematurity. Was there preterm in utero infection? Were you showing signs of that? Did you have fever, chills, this and that? Did they check for the organism? Did they treat it with an antibiotic, and specifically one that they cultured the organism and made sure they used an antibiotic to which that organism was sensitive? That's another sort of typical scenario. That untreated or treated inadequately, that infection can lead to preterm delivery, preterm rupture of membranes, preterm delivery.
So basically kind of equates to like kind of what leads up or causes that prematurity as to whether or not you could take a case, I guess would be the question.
Right. Preterm delivery can't happen without anybody's fault. I fully question the parents as to what they know in that regard, look at the medical
Mhm.
records, determine whether there are indicia of failing to recognize things that were leading to preterm labor and delivery, like a parent calling. So often mothers are calling and say, I'm having some leaking. Oftentimes it's not appreciated what they can be, and they say, that's because the uterus is pressing on the bladder, you get a little urine leaking, don't worry about it. And they tell her to stay home.
They don't bother to check up on it.
3 days later, she's in the hospital with ruptured membranes, and they find a treatable infection that caused those
Oh my
membranes
gosh.
to rupture.
Do you encounter doctors waving away women's concerns more often than not, or is how much of a ratio is that of your work?
It's hard to say ratio-wise, but that's not uncommon at all. And it's not just the doctors, it's nurses, it's staff, it's the receptionist who takes the call. It's hearing the same thing over and over and over again and saying, you're just leaking urine. Well, yeah, 19 times out of 20, they're leaking urine. Once they're not, get them in, do a nitrazine test. You touch it with, remember, litmus paper from high school science? Touch it with litmus paper. If it turns, that's amniotic fluid. Get her in.
Once
So do you think there's a
is by chance, by luck, two is a pattern.
So do you think there's a reason that I guess that medical staff may avoid the reluctancy of testing somebody that may be dealing with that? So like if a mother calls in and they're like, "Hey, I'm dealing with this," and they tend to brush it off, have you noticed any pattern or any reasoning behind being dismissive of those concerns?
My guess would be it's just hearing the same thing over and over again. And some are more astute than others, some are more diligent than others, some are more caring than others. A lot of reasons people blow things off, in every profession and every aspect of life. Yeah.
Now, how would somebody know their child may have cerebral palsy if it hasn't already been diagnosed? So like what are
Well,
the early signs someone should look for?
yeah, typically cerebral palsy is pretty recognizable, even mild. The mildest would probably be things like walking on their toes. Now, a lot of toddlers will toe walk, right? But if the toddler is on his or her toes all the time, and then particularly if you I would tell them, try to straighten out that foot and see if they'll stay flat footed. And they can't because of spasticity. It's called spastic. A diplegia if it's just legs, quadriplegia if it's all the limbs. They're spastic. They can't go down on their heels and stay there. They'll pop right back up again. So toe walking would be something to look for. Another thing would be eyes crossing. They'll have inward turned eyes or maybe just one, and they don't have the ability to straighten that out. Even if you say go like this and try to go like that, you know how our eyes will focus in and then they'll go like this. They won't go like this. They won't widen out. Oftentimes they'll have tracking problems. You take your finger. If you have any question about, Jesus, is this baby focusing on me? Take your finger, go like that. See if they track. Those are some subtle signs that there can be CP before you even get to, "Well, my child's not walking at a normal age."
His ability to grasp items because the different milestones of a child, right? So like the ability to grasp certain items, is it affected? Watch, is that another sign?
Grasp, are you saying?
Yeah, like be able to
Yeah.
physically grasp an object at the marker they're supposed to be able to grasp an object.
Yeah, absolutely. Not just grasp it, but then also see it, track it, make an effort for it. Are they extending the arm? Are they opening the hand and grabbing it? In fact, Tyrell, you bring up another interesting point. This spasticity can hit all limbs, all digits. So if you notice a child fisting, and particularly if the other hand seems to be normal, relaxed, but they're always holding one hand in a fist, that's spasticity. So that's something to be checked for CP.
Or what if parents, because we run into this a lot in the community as well. If parents feel like their doctors are being dismissive of their concerns, what would your recommendation be for those parents that are trying to get a diagnosis and feel like they're not being heard?
Yeah, most people have a primary care doctor now and insurance restrictions, and they have to get a referral, but push for that referral for what they do.
Yeah, I think a lot of why we wanted to bring you on and talk about things is like kind of providing that extra reassurance because a lot of people don't know where to turn, and it's very scary when you're a new parent and you're not seeing your child thrive as I don't like using the word normal, but on par with
Average
other.
of his local social group.
Right. Yeah. And that affects everything, friendships, everything, even however mild it may be. Yeah.
Yeah, and anything starting off, especially for care, and especially in the United States, you need specialized care for your child with cerebral palsy. So any sort of boost at that beginning is helpful, especially if it was caused by someone's negligence.
Yeah, you're totally right about that. The services early on are extremely important. You maximize uh, quality of life and neural function by catching it early and intervening as can be done. Those kind of things are very expensive, as you know. A certain amount is provided in public school systems, not even close to what these parents and these kids need. So that really is
Yeah,
what this is all about. When I talk about millions and millions, it's not about buying jets and yachts. It's about, I mean, you get the things that you need to make your life extremely comfortable. A nice size home that has things you need like ramps and that sort of thing. Good transportation with a nice lift, that kind of thing. Vacations for quality of life. The kids need socializing. The parents need socializing. They
yeah,
really need it. End up in such financial difficulty when they're spending all their time, loving and helping their child, and they can't move forward, making money like people without that heavy obligation can do. So this money gets them support of those sorts of things, gets them care in the home, nurses in the home, assistance in the home to help the parents all the time. It also allows the parents to get out. Parents have to be able to get out.
got to be able
So
to take
even
care of
Like
themselves too, and
the
yeah,
health days and all that.
yeah, it's every bit as much, the parents need it as much as the child. All the neuro input, all the family input, all the life experiences, all the while they're growing. The parents are growing, the kids are growing, they're living a life. It's all about maximizing the quality of their lives. And that is very expensive. And in instances of malpractice causing this, very deserved.
Now, we're talking about like the positives of the client. What things do hospitals or medical professionals do to maybe try to obscure an investigation or hide any cause?
Well, that definitely happens. I mean, I don't want to accuse everybody all the time, but I've got some cases. I had one where I was trying to get the fetal heart tone monitor tracing so I could assess the pattern and see if it appeared that the child was not getting enough oxygen inside the mother. And they said, well, we can't find him. Okay. And they figured I was stopped. So I found an expert who would say, hey, based upon these clinical data, including the condition the child came out in and was in the nursery, I can say if those strips were here, they would have said such and such. Unfortunately, we had a case on point where we would be able to admit that in front of the jury. And lo and behold, they found the monitor strips. Isn't that amazing? I guess they figured they'd rather fight with what's on there that at least is debatable one way or another, how much it supports us versus the jury's going to get our version that these are the most egregious strips there have ever been. That's why they're not here anymore. Right. So there's an example.
So a lack of
yeah,
evidence or gaping hole of data can be a evidence on itself.
It depends on the state, depends on the current case law. In that instance, we had a case that was very helpful in that regard, but you certainly try everything you can and you get an expert who can look at the data, as I said, the clinical appearance and recognize what this pattern most likely would have looked like. There are many ways. Here's another one. They'll alter medical records. Now, in the day when they were all medical records on paper, I had forensic specialists who would analyze and chemically test paper for whether there were any alterations to it. We dated ink so that we could tell the year that ink was created. For example, an entry that alleges to be from 1986. They didn't make that ink until 1998. Well, isn't that interesting?
oh my
And
gosh,
spy work here. Holy dang.
Isn't that amazing? Isn't that amazing? So I could go on and on with the examples like this. Yes, records are hidden. Yes, records are altered. And of course, now they do it with data, computer records. And of course, we trace back the data, lines and entries, and we determine that as well. Sorry, my assistant's showing me something here.
oh no, you're fine.
You know what? She wanted me to mention one thing, and this is really important. A lot of cases get turned down by other attorneys who don't maybe recognize birth trauma quite to the same degree, or maybe have different criteria, higher criteria for taking cases. But almost every $1 million and multi-million-dollar resolution that I've had for decades was turned down, often multiple times, by other attorneys. That was my specialty. When I started out in my practice, you wonder, geez, how does a young guy 2 years out of law school get cases when he starts trying to open up his own firm? I went to the big birth trauma lawyers in my area and I said, let me look at your closed cases. Let me fly spec them and find the needles in the haystack and find if they're pursuable. And if they are, I will take them and I'll pursue them and you and I can split the attorney fee. And I did that case after case after case. So
Yeah, that's awesome.
I really learned my trade on tough cases, and I do that still. So if people think, oh, 2 major law firms told me I don't have a case, don't hesitate to contact me. You may very well have a case. I'll do everything I can to find it.
I would too.
We're gonna put all of the contact information for your firm, for your Facebook page and everything in the description as well, so people will have access to that quickly if they need to contact you. Our goal is to help as many people as possible, and I know the parents in our community really struggle with verb of turn when they're, especially in the early stages of dealing with this. Now, what would you say? Just because I'm curious here, what would you say has been your most complex case?
That's hard to say, and I've never been asked that. They're complex in that if you don't know the material, oh my God, it'd be like me trying to build a rocket. I mean, forget it, right? But I've been doing this for so long and I know it so well. I think the most complex things were when I started out. And as I said, I had medical records on one lap and a medical dictionary on the other, and did everything that I could to understand what I was dealing with. But now decades have gone by and, over the years, I learned so much more that they're not so much complex to me as they're very, very detailed. I do a lot of medical research, that sort of thing. Now, tell you, AI has helped a lot in that regard. I'm a fan of that. But it takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of focus, and you really have to understand what you're dealing with in order to even start out on and complete that research. So I would have to say the most complex cases now aren't so much complex to me as they're time consuming. It takes a lot to go through them and to go through all the literature and figure something out if there's something there to be figured out. I'm sorry, my assistant is showing me something again.
Oh, you're fine. Take your time.
You have twins case that you have.
She's mentioning a couple twins cases that I had that, of course, end up going for about double because you have 2 kids. And they can be complex. And as a matter of fact, someone called me the other day about a twin-to-twin transfusion. And a lot of lawyers, as soon as they hear that, not a case. And she had contacted other lawyers. And I said, well, wait a minute, it can be a case. And I handled a twin-to-twin transfusion case in particular before and got millions on it. So it really is a matter of what they might have missed that indicated what was going on and what could they do at that time, something to intervene to lessen their transfusion or to get the babies out. Sometimes it's worth it. Let's say she's 36 weeks, you do an LS ratio or other tests for fetal lung maturity. If you don't need it, you get them out. If you do need more lung maturity, prolong the pregnancy as you get steroids on board to mature the fetal lungs, but you get that baby out. Unless they're very, very preterm, that could be the way to go with a twin case.
So do you run into a lot of twin cases a lot? Because I know I've seen some comments about I've seen some comments from some parents about how they'll have twins and one will end up with cerebral palsy and the other one won't. And then that can cause a plethora of emotional issues later on as they're growing up and everything, because you've got one twin that doesn't have these medical issues and then one twin that does and that requires more attention. So is that something that you've run into?
Yes, a lot. Parents of twins do call me, and even triplets, and they say, well, we were told that this is what happens with multiple gestations. They deliver early. Not necessarily. Yeah, they certainly can, and on average they do. But remember, term is 38 to 42 weeks. So if they deliver at 39 and 38 in 2 days, that's term anyway. You should get a term result, a good baby neurologically. Even if they deliver at, say, 36 weeks, twins develop neurologically more quickly in utero than singletons do. So if you deliver at, say, 37 weeks and you're a twin, that may be, depending on the baby, more like 39 weeks as a singleton. So it's quick. It's quick and convenient for doctors to say, well, prematurity is due to, the neurologic injury is due to being born preterm. Prematurity, that's a twin thing. Twins they're born preterm, nothing we can do about it. Not the case, and they may not be so preterm developmentally anyway when they come out.
Also, as a quick aside to our viewers, twin-to-twin transfusion syndrome is a serious condition that occurs when identical twins sharing a placenta have an unequal blood flow.
Right. Right. So
Just
the
in case
blood is
no one know what that is and they don't know what to call you
I'm
because they don't know
sorry.
what
Yes.
they're looking for, right?
I'm glad you mentioned that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the twins are feeding off the same placenta in that scenario, and more blood is getting shunted to one twin than the other. So one is getting the largesse, the other is getting a deficient amount. And things can be done about that. And then again, ultimately, what you can do is deliver. And if you know you're going to have to deliver, let's say the baby's only 32 weeks, well, then you quickly get steroids on board. A full course is a week. If you can buy another week, you got a full course of steroids maturing these fetal lungs. So when that baby delivers at 32, 34 weeks, has lungs more like 36, 37 weeks, get a much better neurologic outcome.
I didn't even know that was a thing.
Isn't it something? Yeah, there are so many things.
Yeah.
I'm learning
Yeah.
so much
Yeah.
stuff.
Right. Tell you, just don't make
So-
me build a rocket. Whatever
Okay.
you do.
So do you handle other cases as well, other than just like cerebral palsy? Like do you have other specialties that you kind of help with as well?
That I wouldn't call them specialties of mine, but something as specialized as birth trauma, as in rocket building, you can imagine people really, really know what they know, and they don't do a whole lot otherwise. We know who does these other cases. I know the best attorneys around the country in various areas, not only of medical malpractice, but other serious injuries as well. So I actually have on many occasions helped people with very serious injuries that are not birth related. I know the basics to look at, and then I know who to get it to if I need to do that. And they know me. So it's a very good thing.
Within the realm of birth injury, there's outcomes of palsy. What other disabilities do you do work for? Like whether birth injuries can cause other disabilities?
Yeah. Here's another typical scenario. Babies can get stuck as they're coming out head first, as they do. And they're rotated naturally in a way where one shoulder is anterior, imagine more toward the ceiling, and the other shoulder is posterior. So they come out kind of, sideways. And as they do that, that anterior, the upper shoulder, can get stuck under the mother's pubic bone. So imagine this, the head pops out, right? And here's the shoulder stuck back behind the mother's pubic bone, stuck. So what do? What you don't do is pull on the head. And that's what you want to do. You want to, even if you want to call it traction, child traction, they like to refer to it as, but tilting that head down, trying to get that shoulder. Well, the problem is it's really hard to gauge what's mild. And every one of those things puts a strain on this nerve complex right here. It's called the brachial plexus nerve complex. It innervates the entire arm of that anterior shoulder. And if that is torn, that can cause a brachial plexus arm injury, potentially down through the whole arm and into the fingers. Erb's palsy, ERBS is the common terminology. There's Klumpke's palsy, there's Duchenne's palsy, all injuries to aspects of the brachial plexus nerve complex. You think, well, what are they going to do? They're stuck. And frankly, while the baby's, trapped in there, isn't breathing yet, the cord is pressed against the mom's belly, you don't have long, because then you're going to get into an oxygenation problem. The first thing you do is what's called McRoberts maneuver. The mother is up like this. You take her knees and pull them all the way back to her ears, as far as you can get her legs back, her knees back. Because what that does is those legs come back, it rotates. Imagine this. Here's the anterior shoulder. Here's the pubic bone blocking it. When those knees go back, it rotates this bone up. Imagine being lying down and pull your knees up to your ear. That pubic bone
Pushing
goes
out
up.
a baby.
And then you know what? Well, and then that shoulder
God.
slides right under the maternal pubic bone. It slides right under. No need to pull on the head. There are other maneuvers as well. You can slip two fingers up behind the backside of that anterior shoulder and rotate that baby just like a screw. It's called a corkscrew maneuver. Best thing, of course, put the legs back, get the pubic bone out of the way, all that you can, get two fingers there and slide that sideways, slide that shoulder sideways, and the baby will slip right out.
There's out there spinning babies.
That's funny, right? But when you think about it, it's just the mechanics of it. It's the mechanics. But if you panic and just start trying to pull on the baby's head, that arm is destroyed for life. There are some operations now that might make it better, but they often are not applicable. Often nothing can be done. It's a devastating neurologic injury.
Hear that, doctors? The lawyer says, don't panic.
Yeah. Yeah. So
So
I can
what-
help with both cases as well. Erb's palsy, Duchenne's, brachial plexus
Yep.
injury. Yeah, I know those cases very well and I can help.
So for parents that do have concerns, or if someone isn't sure where to turn and they want to reach out to you, what's the best way for them to get into contact with you if they're just kind of wanting a direction of where to go, or like kind of at least see if they have any basis for a case?
Yeah, that's a great question. And over the years, I've made it very, very simple to where it's really just so formulaic now, it's so easy. I have a Facebook page called Cerebral Palsy Law Centers. If you just put that in your search bar, it'll come right up. Cerebral Palsy Law Centers. That's me. That's who you're reaching. You'll see my picture when it pops up, so you know it's me on the profile picture. All you have to do, and I even say this on my page, you don't even have to give me any facts, anything. Put the child's birth date and the state in which the baby was delivered. Birth date and state. I will get right on that. I will check that birth date with that state's statute of limitations and tell you whether you still have time. If you do still have time, then we'll start getting into some detail. Some very basic questions at the outset, but very quickly, and I mean within minutes, they'll know whether or not they have something that potentially can be pursued. I've made it very streamlined. Cerebral Palsy Law Centers Facebook page, private message, the child's birth date and state. I will get right back to you.
On that topic,
Perfect.
what are some of the distinctions between states that you have to work around, like law, regulations, and standards of care? Like, what are the legal differences between states you have to deal with as a lawyer?
Yeah, that's a very good question. Fortunately, in specialties like obstetrics, that's a board certified specialty. Within specialties, the standard of care is a national standard. It's not a local standard. So if you're dealing with the matter that's, say, a general practitioner's matter, and that's not a specialty, general practitioner, you're held to a local standard. So what are the standards in the Smoky Mountains? I don't know, whatever they are, but you'd have to find that out, and they might be different than here. But the standards in obstetrics are the same nationally. And that's even if you have a GP, a general practitioner, delivering babies. So even if it's a general practitioner, you'd think, oh, well, he's only a local standard. No. If he's going to deliver babies, then he's held to the national standards of obstetrics. So it's the same everywhere in what I do in birth trauma cases. National standard, I'm as familiar with and as easy with a case in Hawaii as a case in Michigan. Doesn't matter. And then on causation, of course, it's the same anyway. I'm talking about what things can cause what injuries. That's neurophysiology. It's the same everywhere.
Something new.
Right?
Sharon, you have any
So
more?
I think that was it on my questions. But what we'll do is we'll link. So if you guys want to check out his contact information, we're going to go ahead and pin that in the comment section. So it'll be easy to find. You don't have to go through the description. We're just going to go ahead and pin that right in the comments. It'll be the first comment on the episode once we get it uploaded. And then if you do have any questions, if you're not sure where to turn, that's why we had this episode. Don't hesitate to reach out. At the very least, it seems like, Russell will get you where you need to be. If he can't help you, he'll find someone who can. So,
Well, I want to thank you both very much. And I want to thank everybody who's listening. I hope I can help you. I will try.
thank you so much for being on today. I really appreciate it. I know that the medical side of it has a lot of parents kind of confused and left in the dark. And I appreciate you being on to kind of provide a little bit of guidance into what can be done as far as that goes.
I learned something new. That's a lot. I learned a lot, actually.
I'm glad to hear that.
I had a good time because I'm learning. So that's the person I am.
That's great. I love that. I love you're inquisitive. That's a great thing.